whoever it is, they're the next Hitler. And it's always just so ridiculous. And I've heard from a lot of the hardcore Israel supporters that Hamas are Nazis. The comparisons are ridiculous. And we don't need to pretend that this, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you if you're trying to interrupt me, but let me just finish my point. I think that the Nazis were a unique evil, and to call everybody Nazis it does just make the term lose value. Now, I would say that to downplay the amount of censorship that we saw under the Biden regime, and even before Joe Biden came in, I think is just not fair.
Dave Smith went on Piers Morgan Uncensored and butted heads with Tim Miller, the woke lunatic, who was calling Elon Musk a Yahtzee, as I don't want to say the actual word. They say it enough in the video for me. But Dave Smith absolutely torched this idiot for calling Elon Musk and Donald Trump and all these Republicans that word that people hate so much, and that really has lost all of its meaning because they just call literally everybody that they disagree with. They call them Hitler, or they call them a Yahtzee, or whatever. All the other istophobes in the book, they've all completely lost their meaning because they've been used so much and they're just so watered down now. And Dave Smith absolutely nukes this woke idiot here live on television. Let's get into this clip here on Piers Morgan Uncensored, where Dave Smith absolutely destroys this woke lunatic, Tim Miller.
Tim Miller's with us now. Tim, great to have you back on Uncensored. I watched this happen. I watched the immediate reaction. I thought, here we go. We're back into the Nazis. Is there no way of American political discourse, led by the Democrats, I have to say, is there no way of just moving past Nazis and Hitler? Can we not just all agree that it's a ridiculous and fatuous thing to keep playing out as a narrative and doesn't work? Hence Trump's big win, despite everyone on the left calling him a Nazi. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think, we'll start with one area of agreement, actually, that I have with you and Clay, which is different for me lately, which is I agree that it is, I don't think, a good strategy. The fact that you guys are talking about it shows that it's not a great strategy. If they were doing some very effective messaging, I kind of think that Clay would probably be ignoring it. So I agree. I think Elon's kind of a weird guy that was doing kind of an awkward gesture. I think we can all admit it was kind of awkward, but he does a lot of kind of awkward things. If I was the Democrats, here's what I'd be focused on when it comes to Elon Musk. This man is the largest government contractor, the largest recipient of government money. He is the largest donor to Donald Trump's campaign. He is the owner of a communications platform, and he will have an office inside the White House. I mean, there was mass outrage on the right about the fact that some people in the Biden administration were emailing Facebook and Twitter people recommending the content be taken down. I don't think that was very smart. I think that was bad policy by the Biden administration. But it was kind of mid-level bureaucratic stuff. I don't think it was really limiting people's free speech all that much. Now, I don't understand how you could be upset about that, but then be okay about the owner of a communications platform having an office in the White House.
If you enjoy content like this, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
A security clearance. And being able to put the thumb on the scale of his algorithm to promote what is happening out of this administration. We can all agree, if you just go on the Twitter or the X For You page, it's like Elon Musk Propaganda Central. So now we have an officer of the American government controlling a communications platform. I would think that people who are concerned about speech and free and open dialogue in this country would be astonished by that. In addition to the potential corruption, if you're an Elon competitor, what must you be thinking right now if you're a competitor of SpaceX or competitor of Tesla, which receive billions of dollars for the government, and the owner of that company is now going to have control over a government efficiency program where he gets to choose where money goes. The corruption here is astonishing. It'd be like if George Soros had an office off of the West Wing when Joe Biden was president. It's insane. So if I was the Democrats, I'd be focused on that level of corruption and not his awkward hand gesture.
Well, it's very interesting what you've just said. And I'll bring Dave Smith in because I've got to say, it's good to hear someone on the left admit that this Nazi stuff is bullshit. I just think it is, and it's just stupid. And also, I just feel I'm not Jewish, but if I was, I would be so endlessly offended, deeply, mortally offended, that people keep trying to draw an equivalence between Donald Trump and the Republicans and the Nazis. I just think it's ridiculous. Anyway, first, your thoughts on that. But secondly, interesting point I thought there from Tim, which is, yeah, you can. I didn't actually agree with your first part, Tim, about Facebook and stuff. I think they did have a pretty insidious impact on things like suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even really an I think thing from Piers Morgan or Dave Smith or Tim Miller or anyone else when it comes to the Facebook having, you know, it's some, I don't want to say insidious, that sounds a bit too harsh, but there was definitely nefarious stuff going on when it comes to the censorship of only one side during the last election, the last couple elections. And it's, like I said, it's not an I think or maybe, it's I know for a fact, because Zuckerberg has come out and said that they did do these things, you know, in an attempt to kind of win over the right wing and win over the people with common sense out there. He's trying to admit to his crimes. And, you know, I don't think it's really going to work very much, but he's trying. And in doing so, he told us it's not an I think anymore. We know for a fact these things happened, even though we kind of knew before anyway. But now we know for 100% fact that these things did happen. So, but what Tim Miller is saying with Donald Trump and Elon Musk and their whole relationship, I'm curious to see what Dave Smith says here, because I do think I agree with him a tiny bit that it is a little bit concerning that someone like Elon Musk does have so much political power. Not only is he the richest, if not one of the richest men in the world, if you know, factor in the Russian oligarchs and the Saudi oil families and stuff like that, but he's definitely up there in regards to financial power. Now he owns one of the largest, if not the largest, social media platform. He has a lot of influence there. He can control the entire algorithm. And now he has the ear of the actual president of the United States. That's a whole lot of power. Then not to mention, you know, Tesla and SpaceX and how much data they collect and everything like that. The guy's pretty powerful. And when you take into account that he wants to implant chips in people's brains and stuff like that, I don't know how much I like it. Now, I think me and Tim Miller are, you know, we're iffy about that for completely different reasons. He's like, oh, he's a Nazi and he wants to overthrow democracy and all the other machine state BS that gets thrown around about Elon Musk and Donald Trump. For me, it's more like he might be the Antichrist. You know, there's a decent chance that he's the Antichrist. You know, he wants to implant chips in people's brains, and he does a lot of things. You know, there's a lot of clothing that he's worn in the past that's kind of just like, what is that? You know, it's just weird stuff. So I'm iffy on Elon Musk, but people get mad at me every time I say that. I've always said that. I just don't really trust him very much. And I think me and Tim Miller don't trust him for completely different reasons. Let's see what Dave Smith has to say, though, in response to Tim Miller there, and calling him a Nazi and calling him a threat to democracy and all that other stuff. Let's see what Dave Smith has to say.
The New York Post getting locked out of social media for the last 2 weeks of that last election and so on. I think that was very wrong. However, I do think you make a very interesting comparative point. And Dave, I'm interested what your take is on this. First, Nazigate, but secondly, the point Tim makes about Elon Musk getting an office in the West Wing and comparing that to the influence perhaps that Facebook had last time round.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, there's some that I agree with, a lot I don't. So I would be in agreement that I think even if you want to make the argument somehow that like Elon Musk this was a dog whistle, he's a secret Nazi and he chose this as his moment to like subliminally come out as a Nazi, and that was the message somehow. The fact is, Pierce, as you addressed at the top of the show, the Democrats have just gone to this well far too many times and nobody's listening anymore. So even if this was the real case, which I don't think it is, I think he's just a somewhat awkward kind of herky-jerky guy in these moments. But even if this was the case, I'm sorry, you just billed Donald Trump's rally as a Nazi rally because it was in Madison Square Garden. Yeah. And that was the only connection that you had. So it's just boy who cried wolf. And I will say, you know, I am Jewish. I don't think it matters that I'm Jewish and you're not. I think we can all have an opinion on this. But I think that the constant comparisons to Hitler and the constant invoking of the Nazis is just stupid. Yeah. And I'll put the blame initially, I really think it's the neoconservatives who first really put this into the popular lexicon, where every single enemy that they wanted a regime change against was always the next Hitler. Saddam Hussein's the next Hitler, Bashar al-Assad, Muammar Gaddafi, whoever it is, they're the next Hitler. And it's always just so ridiculous. And I've heard from a lot of the hardcore Israel supporters that Hamas are Nazis. The comparisons are ridiculous. And we don't need to pretend that this, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you if you're trying to interrupt me, but let me just finish my point. I think that the Nazis were a unique evil, and to call everybody Nazis just it does just make the term lose value. Now, I would say that to downplay the amount of censorship that we saw under the Biden regime, and even before Joe Biden came in, I think is just not fair. I mean, listen, as somebody who was adamantly opposed to lockdowns and vaccine mandates during COVID, the censorship was very widespread, and many people had their lives and livelihoods ruined simply for speaking up about government policies that, by the way, they turned out to be right about. And all the people saying follow the science turned out to be wrong about quite a bit of the science. I would also say that it's interesting to me that Democrats always seem to get concerned with the concentration of power as soon as they're out of power. And it's kind of wild to see that the party of George Soros and banker bailouts and all types of just corrupt, concentrated power now have an issue with this. I think there's always a concern. This is the way the American political system is set up. And yes, there is a concern with powerful private interests wielding government influence. But I also would not equate the government getting in the business of censoring the American people with someone like Elon Musk, who at least his promise with Twitter has been that it's going to be a free speech platform. And I think he's moved more in that direction. And so they're not the same thing at all. Like, I don't have the same problem with a tech executive being in the White House who's going to protect free speech than I do with the government instructing tech executives to censor speech.
Okay, Tim, you were trying to speak there.
It's so funny how, like, the whole time he was talking, Tim Miller was, you know, the whole time Dave Smith was talking, Tim Miller was making all these faces and trying to laugh and act like Dave Smith was saying things that are absolutely ridiculous. There is nothing that Dave Smith said just now that is not 100% true. There's not a single thing. Especially Tim Miller started laughing whenever he said that the Democrats are the party of corruption, which, by the way, Dave Smith is not a Republican at all. I think he identifies as like a libertarian or something like that, but he very much criticizes the right wing and the left wing. It just so happens that the left wing has a lot more to criticize than the right wing right now at this point in history. And they are the party of corruption. You know, he said that the party of George Soros and Nancy Pelosi and, like, dude, all the insider trading, most of them are Democrats. You know, I'm sure that there's some Republicans that do it too, of course, but most of them are Democrats. The faces of it are Democrats. And, you know, when it comes to the people who are really running things, like, if we're being honest, they are more on the woke side. You know, when and I'm talking about really running things. I'm talking about the people that are responsible for the dissolving of the nuclear family and the race wars happening between the races, the people who are causing these things and, you know, planting those seeds into society. It's all Democrats. You know, it's all people who are left leaning. It's all people who would fall into the woke category. There's no doubt about it. So I don't know why he's making all these faces and fake laughing as if Dave Smith is being ridiculous in the things that he's saying. He's only spitting facts as he normally does. Let me know in the comments though what you guys think about Dave Smith absolutely cooking this woke idiot Tim Miller here live on television. And he was trying to put on a brave face. He was trying to act like he wasn't affected. He very much was affected, and it's very obvious. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this whole Dave Smith versus Tim Miller on Piers Morgan Uncensored situation.